What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Review and Preview. This week's episode featuring the NFL Divisional Round. My name is Tom Scavetta, joined alongside Amine Kisawi. Amine, how are you doing? And first and foremost, you went 6-0 last week. Where did you find last week's script, and why didn't you share it with me?
Yeah, I had a good week. I wish I was a betting man. I would have placed some money on those games. Yeah, I had a good sense for those games. I've been watching these teams, for the last 5 or 6 years as they're set up, and I really didn't have any. There weren't any surprises for me, at least, in terms of wild card weekend.
Well, I mean, I was shocked with how bad the Vikings looked. I know they had lost to the Rams in the regular season, but 2 weeks in a row. I mean, it seems like they had a Detroit hangover, and that really screwed me over. I only went 3-3 this week. All of our flip games went to you. Um, but to be honest with you, there was only one good game this week, in my opinion, and it
Yeah.
was the Bucks Commanders. And I mean, as you said, it'll come down to who gets the ball last. And I'll be honest, the Commanders look like a threat. They look like a threat, and they deserve a lot of credit. But overall, a bad week of games.
Yeah, the Viking game didn't surprise me only because, like I told you last week, Sam Darnold, I don't believe in him. I've been watching him as a Jet. I watched his Jet career from beginning to end, and I know he had a good season, but the playoffs, against a coach as talented at taking away your quarterback as McVay is, I just saw the writing on the wall for him, and it wasn't just him who played bad; it was the whole team. Defense didn't do anything either, but yeah, the Vikings, I wasn't sold on them. I thought they were for a 14-win team. I thought they were a bit of a fake 14-win team. The
Interesting. I mean,
Chargers too was
yeah.
another. The Chargers is another one that I wasn't surprised by because Herbert, he didn't have. I saw this stat. He had 3 interceptions all season. He had 4 in that game, which is crazy to think, especially with his coach being such a great quarterbacks coach in Jim Harbaugh. But that Texans defense, especially the secondary with Stingley, are so strong. And I knew that they'd be hyped for the first playoff game. They were at home, and they didn't surprise me. The Bucks Commanders game was a great game, a little bit lower scoring than I expected, but still easily the game of the week. And yeah, it came down to who had the ball last. And Daniels made a great play on a third down, which allowed them to kill the clock. Basically, if they had stopped them there, they kicked the field goal. At least Baker's got a minute or so to work with to get them in a field goal range to send it to OT. But Jaden Daniels, oh my goodness, this kid is, Washington hit, finally after 30 years of bad quarterbacks, they finally have the guy in Washington. It's going to be fun to see his career.
Certainly. Yeah, it was an interesting weekend for sure. We'll definitely talk more about it as we go through the divisional round games. And if you're new to the channel, folks, and you like watching Amine and I on your screen, feel free to check us out on all of our social media platforms at Review and Preview Sports, specifically on YouTube, where this episode will be up exclusively. Excited to get this week's show out. Before we get into the games for this upcoming weekend, there's already been one new head coaching hire, and that's the New England Patriots hiring their former player, Mike Vrabel, as the team's new head coach. He is 49 years old. He played for the New England Patriots from 2001 to 2008, a three-time Super Bowl champion, became the head coach of the Tennessee Titans in 2018, won 2021 NFL Coach of the Year with them. He spent this past season as a consultant for the Cleveland Browns. He has a 54-45 regular season record, 2-3 in the postseason, and most notably, I mean, he brought the Titans to the AFC Championship game back in that 1920 season. What do we think of this hire, and how long could it take for the Patriots to get back into contention?
Yeah, I think it's a great hire. I'm not thrilled that they fired Mayo after one season, basically gave him, you know, the short end of the stick. I know he didn't have a good season, obviously, and he had the drama with calling the team weak. The coaches do that all the time to try to hype them up and get them motivated. So a little bit, the Patriot way is no longer the Patriot way of Bill Belichick. But in terms of coaching hires, I think he's the right guy. He is a great coach. What he did with Tennessee, didn't have a great quarterback at Tennessee, and yet, like you said, he took him to the AFC Championship game. Another fact about Vrabel as a head coach, he is the one who ended the Patriots dynasty. Ironically, the last game of Tom Brady's career as a Patriot, and really the last time the Patriots were relevant at all in the AFC wildcard 2019 playoffs in New England, he beat them, and he beat them decisively to end that dynasty. So, and they were the defending champs also that year. So great coach. He's got a great little resume. He's only coached 6 seasons, but they were, 3 times in the playoffs, an AFC Championship appearance. And from hearing all the talking heads on TV and people at work who played with him, a lot of Patriots work at ESPN, obviously, they all speak about him so highly. And I think he's going to do a good job, but I think it's going to take some time, and it will take some patience on the part of Robert Kraft. If he's expecting Vrabel to come in here, they got a good young quarterback, so they're set. They just need pieces. But they need a lot of pieces. Like, they have no weapons basically at the moment. So I think it's going to take about at least 3 years for them to be a playoff team in that stacked AFC. The AFC is really strong right now with good quarterbacks everywhere you look. AFC East is going to still run through Buffalo. I don't think that's going to change for the next couple of years. Tua, if he can stay healthy, will keep the Dolphins strong, and then there's the Jets disaster. So I think it'll take some time, but I do like the hire.
Right. Well, let's be real. Miami's another Tua injury away, unfortunately, from the Patriots, in my opinion, being the second best team in that division again. And yes, it will take pieces. They need new offensive linemen, new wide receivers, new defenders. I mean, Christian Gonzalez, that's a start, but you need more than that. You need to get better in the trenches again. And I'll be honest with you, Amine, I think this hire would have came last year if the Patriots knew that the Titans were going to fire Mike Vrabel. And the only reason why Vrabel got fired is because he did not get along with the new GM, Ran Carthon, who was hired last year, who is now since fired after this season. So I think Vrabel not being – Gerard Mayo was the head coach waiting in the wings. That was the plan all along when Belichick went out. But then they found out Vrabel's free, and it's like, yeah, we can't tell Gerard now, yeah, by the way, we're not going to hire you. But I do completely agree. I think players were complaining about Mayo behind closed doors, and I think Vrabel, as a proven head coach with experience, I think this will be a great fit for the New England Patriots. But yes, it will take some time. You may not see a 500-plus record until year 3, potentially. But don't be surprised if New England does a little better this year. Maybe, 6-11, 7-10. I would not be shocked. Would not be shocked.
He got in Tennessee his first 2 seasons. They did not make the playoffs. It was in the third season where they finally got over the hump, and then they got good for the next 4 seasons. So Kraft's got to give him some time, and I think he will.
Right. Absolutely. Completely agree with that. Without further ado, speaking of the playoffs, let's get into the playoffs, our divisional round preview. We start off with a Saturday game. The now 11-7 4-seeded Houston Texans will go on the road to tee off with the 2-time defending Super Bowl champions, Kansas City Chiefs, back-to-back years, I should say. They're the 1 seed this year. They won 15 games, and week 18 really doesn't count because they rested almost all of their starters. So the Chiefs favored by 8. And now, we mentioned the Texans coming over a very impressive 32-12 win over the Chargers, a team that forced 4 Justin Herbert interceptions. However, the Chiefs are 8-0 this year at home, and they beat the Texans just a few weeks ago. Back in week 16, they beat Houston 27-19, forcing 2 CJ Stroud interceptions. So on the surface here, how are you looking at this game, and what do you think is going to happen?
I think this is going to be the easiest one to predict of the 4 games this week. I don't see the Texans even really testing the Chiefs in their first playoff game, going for the three-peat. I think They're going to be motivated. They're going to come out. They got rest. And Andy Reid in his career, 29-5 with a bye week. That is one of the best records in the history of the NFL in terms of head coaches. He does not lose when he has a bye, and especially not to a team who are significantly inferior to them, like the Texans are to the Chiefs. Another big aspect of this game is the weather. It's going to be played in frigid, freezing conditions. The Texans 0-6 all time when the temperature is freezing, whereas Patrick Mahomes is one of the best cold weather quarterbacks ever. Chiefs, I think, are going to cruise to this one, and I think they're going to win by more than 8. But I don't see the Texans. I mean, it would be a huge upset if the Texans pull this one off, but I don't see it happening. I think the fact that it is the Chiefs' first game is the biggest reason why they're going to defeat the Texans. It's like the Patriots when they were the dynasty. They always had a bye and they always won their first game. Sometimes they might lose in the Super Bowl, the conference championship, but they don't lose that first game at home. Texans played really well last week, and their secondary is very strong. But at the same time, I don't think they're going to be able to put up the points that the Chiefs are going to put up. And I think the Chiefs win this one easily, 34-14. Big win.
All right, Amine, I'm going to have to write that down. Amine likes the Chiefs this week and potentially every week. There's a couple key matchups here for me, and it's the Chiefs' defense is fourth in the NFL in points per game allowed, just over 19 points per game they're giving up. They give up 19 points to the Texans in Week 16. Houston needs to be able to establish the run with Joe Mixon. Houston is 6-2 when Mixon runs for 100-plus rushing yards. Here's the problem with that. The Chiefs are tied second in the NFL against running backs, giving up just 3.8 yards per carry. They have awesome linebackers in Nick Bolton, 106 tackles, 11 TFLs. Drew Tranquil, you'll see a lot of him in pass coverage sets. And Houston just doesn't have enough weapons. I know Nico Collins had over 120 yards and a score last week, but he's going up against Trent McDuffie this week, who had 13 passes defended and 2 picks this season. He's a good, young, up-and-coming corner. And then in the trenches, we mentioned how concerned we are with this Houston offensive line last week, even going up against the Chargers. This week, you got guys like Chris Jones, George Karlaftis. It's a problem. It's definitely a problem. On the other end, the Chiefs offense, middle of the pack this year. It was a down year for Mahomes and this Chiefs offense, but they still won 15 games. That's the stat that matters the most. And I think these Chiefs receivers will be challenged, right? You got Derek Stingley, who had 2 picks last week. Kamari Lassiter with a pick as well. And the Chiefs' offensive line, it's sort of in decline outside of Creed Humphrey. The left tackle position this season has allowed 12.5 sacks. And the Chiefs, it's concerning. And the Texans had 4 sacks last week. They pressured Justin Herbert on 50% of his drop back. So I'm looking at, can DeAndre Hopkins, Xavier Worthy, and now Hollywood Brown create enough separation so that Mahomes can get the ball out quickly? I think he will be able to. And keep in mind, you also got good old Mr. Reliable Travis Kelce and backup tight end Noah Gray, the former teammate of our buddy Daniel Jones, with 5 touchdown receptions this season. And I think what's the icing on the cake, is the running game. Kareem Hunt signed off the street. Yes, it's his second tenure with the Chiefs, but he had to fill in for Isaiah Pacheco, who only played in 7 games this year. I think that duo will be able to keep defenses honest, and especially defenses like this, like the Houston Texans, who are also tied with the Chiefs for second in the NFL in yards given up to running backs. So that stat sort of cancels out. I'm not looking into that much. And the history, it goes against Houston. They lost to the Chiefs in the playoffs in both 2015 and 2019. What do they say? Things happen in threes. Give me Kansas City 31-17.
Yeah, that 2019 game, I remember it so well because I wasn't watching. I was with a family event, and I had my phone checking the score, and it was 24-0
4-0.
Texans in the second quarter. At halftime, by halftime, it was 28-24 Chiefs, which tells you how quickly Mahomes can put up points.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It's definitely a good point. So we both have the Chiefs moving on to the AFC Championship game, similar scores as well. Next up, we head to the NFC. The sixth seeded Washington Commanders are now 13-5, heading up to Detroit to Ford Field to take on the number one seed Detroit Lions, who are 15-2. Lions favored by a chunky 9.5 points. The Commanders win their first playoff game since January 7th, 2006. Oddly enough, as we didn't get to mention this last week, also against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Jaden Daniels became the first rookie quarterback to win a road playoff game in 13 years. I mean, the Commanders have won 6 games in a row. These are 2 top 5 scoring offenses. This game is going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, that spread is crazy to me. I know that the Lions won 15 games and they're the number one seed, but man, nine and a half against this Commanders team, who are as red hot as they are. This is maybe going to be the best game of the divisional round, in my opinion, because the Lions, as good as they are, they're pretty banged up. There's a lot of guys who are out. I know there's rumblings that Montgomery, who missed the last 3 games, is going to play this week. How effective will he be? Last year in the playoffs, he was an absolute monster for the Lions, set the franchise postseason rushing record in 2023. How will he, if he comes back, how will he play? But to me, the story of the game is Jaden Daniels. This kid, wow, I knew he'd be good, Heisman winner and all that, but this level of clutch gene, he leads the NFL in fourth quarter slash overtime passing touchdowns. He's a rookie and he leads in fourth quarter touchdowns, fourth quarter NOT. And last week he did it again in the clutch when they needed a big play. He got it for them. I'm almost tempted to go with Washington. Let me say this. I'm picking the Lions to win because similar to the Chiefs, because they're at home, because it's the first week, they are the one seed. I think they'll have had time to prepare, and I think they're going to put all their focus on getting to Daniels. As elusive as he can be, and he's a great runner, they've got to put pressure on him and make him feel like they're coming at him every single play so that he doesn't have time to do anything dazzling like he has all season. The Lions at home, they're going to put up points. No doubt about that. They've got such a great receiver in St. Brown, and Goff has really, the last 2 years, what a change in his career. I thought he was going to be, when the Rams let him go, even though he took him to a Super Bowl and they lost to the Patriots, when they let him go, I thought, yeah, that's the right call. But boy, has he looked like a star these last 2 years. This year, he's been so effective throwing the ball, not just in terms of yards and touchdowns. His completion percentage is always, always like among the best every week. And so I look at this game and I wonder what's going to happen. I know Jaden Daniels this season, the Lions defense is really strong, but he is the second best quarterback against the blitz this season in passing in QBR. So he knows how to deal with the blitz. And then you look at strength versus strength. The Lions receivers, when they get the ball, they lead the NFL in yards after catch. Washington's defense is the best in terms of stopping yards after catch. So it's number one versus number one. And I'm very interested to see who wins that battle. I think the Lions are going to win this one, not by 9.5 points. I think Washington is going to make a game of it. I think Daniels is going to actually perform well. But similarly to Russell Wilson, who was the last QB to go on the road and win, as you mentioned, and when he played in that second game, the divisional round, they were at Atlanta. He had a good game, but it just wasn't enough, and the Falcons beat them. I think it'll be the same story here. Daniels will play well, but I think the Lions are hungry and motivated, and I don't see them losing their very first game at home. That crowd is going to be wild. So I'm picking the Lions to win. Relatively low scoring game considering who these two teams are. I'm going to say Lions 24, Commanders 20.
All right. So, yeah, look, the Lions offense has been elite this year, first in the NFL in points scored, 31 plus in each of their last 5. Commanders are 5th in the NFL. They were 3 for 5 on fourth down last week against Tampa Bay. Both of these head coaches, their names are Dan, and they both love to go for it on fourth down. Daniels only sacked once last week against Tampa Bay. He was phenomenal. He found Jahmyr Brown a lot. Jared Goff this year was great, over 4,600 yards and 37 touchdowns, averaged over 270 passing yards per game, and that's on a run-first offense. That's incredible. This is the key of the game for me. Washington's run defense is the parting of the Red Sea. It is bad. It is really, really bad. Defenses are supposed to win championships, and this is not a championship level defense. We could say all we want about Jaden Daniels. There comes a point in time where the whole team is going to have to perform at an elite level, and I just don't think they can do it. They have allowed 4.9 yards per carry to running backs. That is 30th in the NFL. Montgomery is expected to return. Jahmyr Gibbs over 1,400 yards, 16 scores on the year. Montgomery has 12. Likely would have been more if he didn't get hurt. And the Commanders struggled against Baker Mayfield last week. He only threw the ball 18 times. They allowed 92 receiving yards to Mike Evans. So it's a problem all across the board. I mean, you mentioned it. St. Brown, 115 catches, 12 scores. Jameson Williams, another 1,000-yard receiver for Detroit. Tim Patrick's come on as of late. Sam Laporta with 7 scores, the young tight end sensation. And another thing, too, Kevin Zeitler, their right guard, has a chance to play this week. That's how important this first-round bye was for them to get the offensive line back healthy, back together. They have one of the top offensive lines in the NFL. I think those red helmets are going to be pushed back, and I think that's a big problem for me. I know Terrion Arnold is questionable then on the defensive end, so I think Scary Terry might have a big game. But Carlton Davis and Amik Robinson were serviceable corners this season, so it'll be interesting to see what happens there. Also, the Lions on pass defense, they're good. Brian Branch, Kirby Joseph with 9 interceptions this year. They're also really good against tight ends, so I don't know how involved Zach Ertz will be in this game. Their one flaw defensively, if they have one, they struggle to stop rushing quarterbacks. Jaden Daniels, nearly 900 yards and 6 scores on the ground this year. However, Alex Anzalone came back in week 18. Jack Campbell, 131 tackles. Those guys are excellent on the second level. All-time, Amine, you'll find this interesting. Commanders are 3-0 against the Detroit Lions in the NFL playoffs. It ends here. I have Detroit winning this game. Final score 27-20. Moving on to the next game, we head over to Sunday. It will be the 4-seeded Los Angeles Rams coming off that hot win against the Minnesota Vikings at the Link, taking on the number 2 seed Philadelphia Eagles. Eagles are favored by 6.5 points, and they're coming off a big win against the Green Bay Packers, winning 13 of their last 14 games. These teams met back in week 12 where the Eagles dominated the Rams 37-20.
Yeah, it's going to be a good game. I think the Rams are looking pretty good in that game against Minnesota. They set a franchise-tying record for sacks in a game. They looked, I don't know, they looked like they were so pumped up and playing for LA with all the stuff that LA is going through at the moment. You kind of root for this team a little bit. And if they win this game and Washington wins, they get to host a game in the conference championship. So that would be wild. And that would definitely lift the spirits of that city a little bit. In terms of this game, I think it's going to come down to, can Saquon Barkley match what he did in the regular season? If he does, this game is going to be a blowout. He had 255 rush yards, the 9th most in any game in NFL history against the Rams in the regular season. But here's the key. Sean McVay has never allowed a 100-yard rusher in the playoffs, ever. And I know he's young, but he's had a lot of playoff games these last 8 years or so. So can Barkley recreate that magic? If he does, they're going to run all over them. I'm looking at the receivers, and I look at A.J. Brown, who's had a bit of a struggle the last couple of games, especially last week in the playoffs, and Cooper Kupp on the other side, another great receiver who's been struggling as of late. So can one of those guys get out of the funk and have a big explosive games? Both teams have other weapons, obviously Devontae Smith, Puka Nacua, and Kyron Williams, many others. But can those big names have big days? I think the Eagles are going to win this game. I think the Rams feel good story is going to end here. I just think the Eagles have too much defensively. They're the best defense in the NFL in several categories, including points when you include the playoffs. So I think they're going to put the Rams in check. I think Stafford, he's one of these guys, even though he's got that Super Bowl win, I don't see him being consistently clutch and great in the playoff setting. He had that 1 year, yes. But other than that, it's always been good game, bad game, good game, bad game. I think this is going to be a bad game for him. The Link is one of the toughest fields to play on. That crowd is going to be insane, as always. I don't root for the Eagles, but I'm picking them. They're going to beat the Rams, and I think they're going to go to the conference championship game. They're going to make a trip to Detroit, and I think they're going to win this game. I think they're going to go over. I think the Eagles win this one 23-17.
Okay. Yeah, look, the key for me, you mentioned, McVay not giving up a 100-yard rusher ever in the playoffs, but Saquon has rushed for over 100 yards in 7 of his last 8 games. He ran for 255 last time out against the Rams, and the Rams are very poor against the run. Christian Roseboom and Omar Spates would not be starting inside linebackers on most NFL teams. However, the Rams defense has held opponents to under 10 points in 4 of their last 5 games. And the Eagles, my concern for them, they were just 1 for 4 in the red zone last week against the Green Bay Packers. And with the Rams, their strength is their pass rush. Look, they sacked Sam Darnold 9 times last week. Kobe Turner got there. Byron Young got there. Darnold was pressured 52% of the time, yet they only blitzed 19% of the time. So, yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see what happens. Jalen Hurts, again, he's whatever to me. I mean, he doesn't have to do much for them to win football games. He only threw for 130 yards last week, but he did have 2 touchdown passes. Brown, Goddard, Smith, they're all great weapons, but they don't need to be used that much for them to win. They just control the line of scrimmage and run out all the clock. That's what they do. That's their formula to winning football games. The Rams did a really good job last week against receivers Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison, held them to both under 60 receiving yards. But look, I just don't know if that's going to matter. And then flip it to the other side of the ball. We're talking about Matt Stafford. The Eagles defense had 4 takeaways last week off Green Bay. And they have the second best defense in the NFL, points per game allowed. How are the Rams going to beat the Eagles when you haven't scored 21 plus points since the beginning of December? I don't know how it's going to happen. They lost Tyler Higbee again. He left with an injury against the Vikings. Yeah, Cooper Kupp has been bad in 4 straight games. They haven't been able to get him the football. And you're looking at 3 young corners in 2 young corners in Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell and the elder statesman in Darius Slay that helped force 3 Jordan Love interceptions last week. That's a problem. Now, my one concern for the Eagles here, can they stop the run consistently? They lost linebacker Nakobe Dean for the remainder of the postseason, and Kyron Williams can run the football well. 16 rushes for 76 yards last week. The Rams and the Eagles have not met in the playoffs since the 2001 NFC Championship game. That was where the Rams went on to face just a random guy named Tom in the Super Bowl. Not anyone important there. I have the Eagles winning this game, unfortunately. I think the Rams defense is able to keep it tight. I have the Eagles winning. Final score 20-16. Very low scoring for me. I went even a little bit lower than you there, Amine.
And we're agreeing on these 2 games.
We'll see if we agree on this last one here. In my opinion, this is the game of the week on CBS Sunday night, or Sunday evening, I should say, around a 6:30 start. The number 3 seed Baltimore Ravens take on the number 2 seed Buffalo Bills. Baltimore is favored by 1 point, despite being on the road. Both teams coming off against good wins last week. The Bills have lost in the divisional round each of the last 2 seasons. Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson, the 2 top MVP candidates, they are 2-2 against each other all time. And the Bills beat the Ravens 17-3 in the 2020 Divisional Round playoff game. So, Amine, what are you thinking here? This is going to be a very fun game to dissect.
Oh yeah, this is definitely the main event of the weekend. Like you mentioned, these guys are going to finish 1 and 2 in the MVP vote, and really outside of Patrick Mahomes, they are the two best quarterbacks, certainly in the AFC, maybe in the entire NFL the last couple of years. So and it's their first time meeting in the playoffs. We I've been waiting for this matchup, and the spread tells you all you need to know. The fact that it's 1 to the road team, this is totally a pick 'em. Which team is going to play their best football on Sunday night? That's what it's going to come down to. Because if these two teams both play their very best on offense, defense, special teams, in my opinion, the Ravens have the edge because they have outrushed every single opponent they have played this season. 18 games, 18 times they have the rushing lead. They had they absolutely destroyed Buffalo earlier this season. I think they won by over 20 points, if I'm not mistaken. And Derrick Henry had almost 200 rushing yards in that game, which I think he had his season high actually in that game. He's coming off another monster game last week. What a pickup he has been. Talk about a perfect fit. Taking him and his strengths and plopping it onto this team who runs the ball so well, has a great line and a great rushing quarterback, just puts them over the top. When I look at the Bills, I'm worried because Josh Allen is 1 and 4. You mentioned he's lost 2 in a row. He's 1 and 4 overall in the divisional round, and they've lost at home the last 2 seasons. I think they're going to lose at home again this season. I just think the Ravens, coming off that huge win over Pittsburgh and just dominating them and playing the way they play, that smash mouth, physical, get after it style of football, that wins 9 times out of 10. And I think last year they made it to the conference championship and lost. Lamar Jackson has never in his career won 2 consecutive postseason games. Looking to do that for the first time here. And I think he gets it done. I think him and Henry are what I think this is going to be high scoring, but I think him and Henry at the end of the day are just going to be too much for the Bills. They're going to wear them down. And by the end, I think they're going to have the edge. It's a pick 'em. If the Bills were to have some kind of if Allen has a crazy passing / rushing game, I can see them winning. But at the end of the day, I think the Ravens are too strong, on too many levels. The Zay Flower, if they get Zay back, hey, even better. I don't know if that's a possibility, but I know he's, if not this week, probably next week if they get that far. I think the Ravens win this game. High, pretty high scoring game, kind of a shootout style game up in Buffalo in the cold. I think the Ravens pull it off 34-28. I think they win by a little less than a touchdown.
All right. For me, one note to bring up back in week 4, Derrick Henry had 199 rushing yards and 1 score. However, the Bills did not have the following players on defense: Matt Milano, Terrell Bernard, their 2 best linebackers, and Teron Johnson. Lamar also had a really good game that week. Lamar has rushed for 60 or more in 3 straight games, and the Ravens are 11-0 when Derrick Henry goes for 90-plus rushing yards. So it's going to be a problem. Keys of the game: can Buffalo contain the running game of Baltimore? That sets up the play action pass. That sets up these Lamar scrambles. It's going to be tough. I think Buffalo being at home gives them a slight edge in a couple key areas. For me, this Ravens offense has been elite as of late. They've scored 28 plus in 5 straight games. However, the Bills defense held the Broncos to just 7 points last week, and they've allowed under 24 points in 4 straight games. Zay Flowers missed, but they still got weapons, right? You got Rashad Bateman, who scored a touchdown in 6 of his last 9 games. Isaiah Likely. You got Mark Andrews as well, who's been a touchdown beast this season. And the Ravens defense, on the other hand, has allowed under 18 points in 5 straight games. So Josh Allen really needs to get James Cook going in this game. He had 120 rush yards last week, 16 scores on the year, tied first in the league. It's going to be really, really difficult to figure out how the battle of the trenches is going to go. the Ravens have the best run defense in the NFL this year, and I could see Josh Allen throwing a pick or two in this game. But I'm going the other way. I think the
Wow.
Bills find a way to win. I think Lamar Jackson's playoff curse continues where he can't win multiple playoff games in the same season. I think Buffalo having that home field advantage, I think Josh Allen is able to deliver a couple of home run balls in this game. Keon Coleman is a guy that concerns me. Baltimore's pass defense was very pedestrian this season. So I am going the other way. I think Buffalo wins by a final score of, I'm going to go Bills 26, Ravens 23.
Wow. Interesting. I mean, I
I
wouldn't be
flipped the
surprised,
script
but
on you there.
yeah, a little bit.
Talking up Baltimore so much, but sometimes the better team doesn't always win football games, folks.
No.
And I do think Baltimore is the better football team. I think they have a lot on their side right now, but the Bills at home in the playoffs, outside of when they play Kansas City, they just don't seem to lose when they're at home, at least. So it is something to consider. Any final thoughts, Amine, as we head into divisional round weekend? I think it's going to be an excellent, excellent weekend, and I'm really excited for all four of these games.
Yeah, divisional weekend is usually the best weekend of the playoffs, probably, because you got 4 games and they're pretty much only good teams and pick 'em kind of games. Uh, it's going to be a great weekend of football, and I'm looking forward to conference championship because these, especially in the AFC, because the main story is, of course, the Chiefs, three-peat, all this stuff. They get talked about every day on every show. Can somebody finally stop them? It won't be this weekend. I don't think it'll be the Texans, but looking down the line, who's going to be the team? Can someone get on a run and do something magical?
Yeah, look, I think whoever comes out of this Baltimore Buffalo game has a legit shot to do it, to unseat
Yes,
them potentially. And I think Baltimore and Buffalo last year, both coming short, have an edge on their backs. And Buffalo's come up short against Kansas City a lot more than Baltimore has. So I think, we'll see. That week one matchup, Baltimore, Kansas City, if it is Baltimore to get there, that's going to be huge. I think Allen and Lamar were the best two quarterbacks in the league this season. You could argue that Joe Burrow was a close third, but I mean, this is the game of the week for me personally speaking. Um,
absolutely.
but yeah. All right, folks. So if you like what you watch here on Review and Preview, you can catch Amine and I here on Review and Preview Sports, our YouTube channel. Make sure to smash that like button, subscribe, ring the bell for notifications. We'll have a conference championship preview last week as well, and we'll see who gets the edge in this week's picks. That's maybe why I went the other way there. I want to see if I could one up Amine and catch up in the standings just a little bit. Folks, we appreciate you all watching. Hope you enjoy the games. Have an awesome weekend, and we will see you back here next week.